How we doing? How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today, how to survive winter in Denver, Colorado. A guide for new residents? A bit dramatic, but we're gonna dive into it starting right now. All right, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everts, and listen, if you're interested in learning all the ins and outs, pros and cons, moving to or around the Denver metro area, and the Front Range for that matter, then this is the channel for you. So that subscribe button and notification icon you see on your screen, make sure you click on that as I'm dropping new videos for you each and every week. And as much as I try to be a little creative here on camera, I'm also a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado and team with some of the state's most talented realtors. And we're helping people move here each and every day. So the number and email you see on your screen, know that I am always the person answering your phone calls, answer your texts, answer your emails. There, winning if you need me. Now that we're done with that fun-filled stuff, let's get ready to defy death by figuring out how to survive winter in Denver, Colorado. All right, so at the end of the day, the name of the game on YouTube is search engine optimization, and surviving winter sounded a lot better than how to prepare for winter, apparently. But let's be clear, I'm pretty certain that we can do a good enough job of preparing for winter that we will all survive. Denver gets pretty cold, and we're gonna talk about the mountains as well, but for the most part, you just stay next to indoors, fire, maybe a nice jacket, and you'll be just fine. So first and foremost, depending on where you're coming from, you might be well versed in cold temperatures. You might be coming from the Midwest where it's just cloudy for months on end and it stays 0 degrees. Here in Denver, we get pretty mild winters for the most part. And when I say that, our average temperature ranges as low as 17 degrees up to about 45. Now, you will see a lot of weather swings. So, it might be frigid cold, snowy in the morning, and then sunny that afternoon. You might have a sunny afternoon where it gets into the 50s, heck, even the low 60s sometimes during the winter, and then all of a sudden at night, it drops and it's darn near, below freezing, or it even sometimes gets into the single digits. So the biggest thing as far as Colorado, people make this comment all the time, is don't trust the weather. What happens at one moment does not mean that will be the entire day. Again, I make that joke about the Midwest. You wake up in the morning and it's gray and you know it's gonna be gray for the rest of your day. We will see days, you will see days here in Denver where it snows in the morning, it looks miserable, and by the time you get home around 3:30, maybe it's dark out because it's 5 o'clock at night, and the snow is gone because it turned into a beautiful day after. Because of that, number two, you need to monitor weather closely. Now, I put this in, and listen, I don't monitor weather very closely. I'm usually the guy that notices somebody on Facebook say, my gosh, we're supposed to get a blizzard tomorrow, or my gosh, it's supposed to be 4 degrees the next several days. But if you're new to the area, I would like you to have a head start on any weather changes. So if it's supposed to snow, if it's supposed to get really cold out, which we usually have a really cold streak of about 4 or 5 days where it drops into single digits, I would like you to be prepared for that. And obviously after you've been here for a while and snow isn't a big deal to you, you cannot pay attention to the news just like I do. Number 3 and 4 literally go hand in hand, foot to foot. Get some proper clothing. Make sure that you have a decent jacket. Make sure that you have a jacket that's, you want a heavy jacket for when it gets really cold. You also want an intermediate jacket. Denver gets a lot of like 40, 45 degree days where you don't need a parka, but you do need a decent jacket. You also need decent footwear. People underestimate, especially if you are tropical people or you're coming from a warmer climate, they underestimate how much heat you lose from your head and from your feet. Yes, our parents were not lying to us, or their parents, because our parents didn't know as much. Regardless, you want like a good hat if you're gonna be out in the cold, and you definitely want to invest in some decent shoes that are gonna keep your toesies warm. It will pay off, I assure you. Plus, we're talking about surviving, so I don't want any of you to get a frostbite and lose some toes. You'd have to be outside for a long time, but let's be real. Now let's talk for a minute about snowfall patterns, because a lot of people have this misconception if they haven't spent a lot of time in Denver, or maybe they've come out to Denver but they like to go up to the ski resorts, this idea that Denver is just constantly pounded with snow. Maybe you're like me and you enjoy the movie The Shining, where when they show Denver and the guy flying into town to get up to the Outlook Hotel, Denver's just like shut down frigid. It's not really like that. Do we get some good snowstorms? We do, But most of our snow, as you'll see as we go through this video, comes later in the year. So through October, November, even through a lot of December, we usually don't see a whole lot of snow. It's actually kind of one of those things where right around Halloween, we expect our first. We've had years where we only have a couple snowstorms through December. And then it's like we think we're most of the way through winter when actually it just started on December 22nd. And that's when Mother Nature is like, I got something for you. In January, February, March, it really ramps up. We talk about snow patterns. I'll also mention the fact that don't think you're out of the woods when we get through January and February, because March, as you'll see in some stats I'll share with you later, is actually our snowiest month on average. And there's even times you'll see statistically where April gets more snow than January. What can I say? Denver's a little confused. It's just not sure what it wants to do. Now let's talk about vehicles and driving, especially if you have not driven in snow before, especially if you have not dealt with ice before. Listen, you and me, because you are going to piss off a lot of people if you struggle to drive in the snow. And hopefully I'm not one of them, but we get annoyed at people who don't know how to drive in the snow. So first and foremost, let's talk about vehicles. Do you necessarily need a vehicle with all-wheel drive? No, depending on where you live, might not be the hugest deal in the world. I at least at a minimum suggest front wheel, and if you can get something all-wheel or four-wheel, that will certainly benefit you. If you have never driven the snow or ice before, you have no idea what you're doing, try to lean towards an all-wheel drive and throw some snow tires on it. There is a difference between the type of traction you need in the summer and obviously the type of traction you need in the winter. I'm gonna simply note that you're probably hearing a squeak from my chair throughout this video, and I'm trying not to move, but man, it's loud. Now, if you have not driven in snow and ice, I want to be clear. It's not the snow that gets you, it is ice. Ice is a different menace, and it really doesn't care what kind of tires you have on your car, and it doesn't care whether you have four-wheel drive, two-wheel drive. It doesn't matter if you're walking or running. Ice is what gets you. So if you have not driven in snow and you have not driven in ice, this is what I encourage you to do. Go to an empty parking lot, something where it doesn't have, where it has a lot of room and where you can maneuver your car around and just drive, take some turns, get a feel for how your car reacts to snow and how it reacts to ice. Now, do I want you to be the person that's driving 15 miles an hour down the road when you don't need to? No, but at the end of the day, I also want you to be safe. So practice will hopefully make somewhat perfect when the real snow comes. Next up, you have to get yourself some snow removal equipment. That is, unless maybe you're living in an apartment or someplace you rent, you don't have to worry about snow removal. A lot of places will still ask you to shovel your walks, but make sure, get a good snow shovel. If you have a decent sized driveway, or even if you don't, I'd suggest it. Get you a snow blower. It's gonna save you a lot of time. And there's snowfalls in Denver that are pretty light. You can get rid of it. There are times where I just take a push broom and get rid of my snow. And then there are at least a handful of snows every year that are heavy. And when you have to lift that with a shovel every single time, it'll blow your back out. So make sure you are getting some good snow removal equipment, and maybe, just maybe, invest in some ice melt. Not exactly the greatest for concrete, so I'm not gonna say rely on it all the time, especially if you own a home, but you might want to keep some handy, certainly for those sidewalks. You don't want, grandma walking her dog down your street and all of a sudden biffs and breaks a hip on your sidewalk. That would not be a good day for either one of you. And not the dog either, because the dog doesn't get walked. Now, I know, I digress. Now, everybody from Colorado is going to mention at this point to avoid a little thing called a north-facing driveway. That is, as you can determine, a driveway that is facing north, hidden by your house, because that means your driveway does not get any sun. Now, is this a catastrophic thing? It depends on the person. I love my house. I knew this rule, and my house has a north-facing driveway. And there are a couple times a year where it really pisses me off because I'm going to have a layer of ice on my driveway I cannot get rid of because no sun hits it. But overall, if you can choose a home or a place that has a south-facing driveway, you're gonna save yourself a lot of time, and you're gonna notice this for the rest of your time in Colorado as you walk down, especially like mountain town streets. One side of the street is busy, there's people everywhere, there's people doing stuff because the sun hits it, and the other side is slow all day. Nobody goes to those shops, you see very little traffic because it's cold, it's icy, north-facing. Couple things on the home front. Insulate your home. No, I don't mean go around and like wrap it up, but buy some of those little cushion things that you slide up against doors. Check for, windows that might have a little crease in them where you get some cool air indoors. It will save you a ton of money. It'll certainly keep your house warmer for you. And along with that, as you're just kind of doing your little maintenance around the house to make sure you're holding that heat in, check your furnace. Can't tell you how many times, even if you're renting, I can't tell you how many times people wait until it's really cold to check their furnace. I'm not saying to crank your heat up to 75 degrees in October when it's still pretty nice out, but I would suggest turn it over. Just see if it works, because the worst thing, or one of the worst things that can happen to you, is when it gets really cold and then you figure out you have a furnace problem, and a lot of the furnace companies at that point are already busy. Next thing you know, you have a freezing house for multiple days before somebody can get out and help you. And a little pro tip from me to you, I don't know if you're the type who gets really dry skin, but I would invest in some humidors for inside your house. Denver is already a high plains desert. It's already dry here. In the wintertime, it can get brutal. And there are times where my hands, my feet, they get so dry, I can't keep up with it. My wife gives me all this crud about putting on more lotion, and I'm like, how many hours a day would I have to put on lotion to keep up with this? Just get some humidors. It will help. Doesn't solve the problem, but it'll help. And last, as far as the home front, just be prepared for that heating bill. Just be prepared for your bill. Odds are to increase in the wintertime, and that's going to depend on, at the end of the day, how warm you keep your house. I like to, I have my Nest thermostat. I like to keep it just bare minimum, 67, 68 degrees during the day. And then, if the family wants it a little warmer at night, have at it. When I leave town and my wife turns it up to 75, I just get on my phone and turn it right back down, because I'm in charge when she's not around. But just be prepared. There's going to be some cold months, January, February. Expect that bill to pop up a little bit. Don't be surprised by it. And while it's wintertime, many of you are still going to want to take advantage of the fact that you're in Colorado and it's beautiful. Many of you are going to be skiers and snowboarders, and even if you're not, the wintertime is still a great time to get up to some of these mountain towns. It's time to get into snowshoeing. There's all sorts of things to do outdoors. So if you're thinking about mountain travel during the winter, make sure, again, that you're prepared from a driving standpoint. Make sure the car is ready. Some of you folks in a Tesla, not that I judge Teslas, but some of you are going to end up with a Tesla with the battery dead on I-70 because of traffic. But be prepared for that drive. Check your weather reports, and especially if you are taking some of the higher, more significant, I don't want to say risky, but some of the more challenging peaks or passes over into a mountain town, just make sure that you're checking that weather report and you're aware of the road conditions as you make that drive. And listen, have I ever had to rely on one? No, but I'd also have an emergency car kit in my vehicle. If I have not made those drives before, even if I have, and I'm going somewhere where the roads might get a little tricky, I might have, again, face some weather conditions. I can't tell you how many times you can't really stop to help them. You need somebody else to do it, but I can't tell you how many times I've been going up a pass and I see a car off to the side of the road needing help. Have that emergency kit with you. You never know if you'll need it. Better to have it in the vehicle. And the last thing I want to mention, and this is real, and certainly, you feel it nationwide, but seasonal depression, if you will, or just kind of that mental health, physical health standpoint of winter is a real thing. One of the greatest benefits that I feel about the Colorado weather, Denver metro area is, we always talk about how much sunshine we get and how many blue sky days we get. It's a real thing. I've lived in Connecticut, Ohio, New York, Hawaii. I mean, Denver didn't quite touch Hawaii as far as weather, but I've lived in a lot of states. I've traveled a lot, been to many areas. And, you live in those areas where, I joke about how gray it can be in others. Denver really gives you a lot of reasons to get outside. Now, you're still going to get the seasonal stuff. I mean, it still sucks when it's 4:30, 5 o'clock at night, as it is anywhere else in the nation, and it's dark. But Colorado gives you a lot of reasons to want to get outside. And I will admit, when I first moved here, I wasn't a very outdoorsy person. I'm not a skier. I'm not a snowboarder. Please don't judge me. I will at some point learn, especially with my daughter, who is going to want to do all of those things. But just the ability to get outside and enjoy the nature that we have in Colorado is very important. I encourage you all to do so. And just think, if you follow all these tips, and if you really listen to what I say about a North Face driveway, you too could survive winter in Denver, Colorado. And if you need to know what kind of jacket to buy, I mean, you give me a call. I'm gonna have my wife give you tips because I don't know anything about fashion or warm clothing. But at the end of the day, I'd love to have a conversation with you. And that's a perfect opportunity to hit me up with a phone call, with a text, with an email, knowing that I am always the person answering those for you. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Jimmy Everett. That was Surviving Winter in Denver, Colorado, a guide for newcomers. Until I see you next time, peace.